Now that brings us to our regular segment, friends and foes, guys you wrestled with and guys you wrestled against. The guy we're going to talk about as this week's friend was a very close friend of mine as well, the late Brian Pillman, who was in the Four Horsemen with you.
Yes.
Certainly had a unique personality. And H, I want to start out by asking you your memories of him in the Horsemen, because I can tell you for sure that there was never a prouder moment in Brian's life than when he was in the Four Horsemen with Ric Flair.
Yeah, well, the problem was Brian was just too good, and once again, the politics of the business. They ended that. That was the shortest run, but he should have been there forever. Brian was a fabulous athlete. Again, I like to use the word legit. D1, Cincinnati Bengals, everything else. And then we're just a tough kid, but a really nice kid. But he became and caught on to wrestling so fast and got so good. But it was like going back to the night that we turned on Sting and Sting gave me that hot tag. I had street clothes on and I came in around and nailed Sting, boom, boom, and Pillman and I and Arn beat the crap out of Sting. The next day, we get to Jacksonville, Florida, and Eric has Sting beat me in the middle with his hold. Arn feeds in and put the hold on Arn. And I think I've told this before. I hope I didn't say it in the show. We can take it out. But Sting goes back in the locker room and Sting's back. Eric Biggerdale's going, Sting's back. Not a word to me and Arn. Nothing. And then, of course, there was no angle. It was over.
Well, you mentioned Brian's football background. The story I always like to tell about him, he was a 5'10" nose tackle at Miami of Ohio, and he made second-team All-American. You know who the first-team All-American was?
No.
The Fridge, who was literally William Refrigerator Perry.
Oh, Clemson,
literally twice Brian's size.
Wow.
And boy, what a statement that made about Brian, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, a phenomenal athlete. And a great, great person, too.
Yeah, and like a maniac, which I say in the fondest way possible. I talked to him, every day for years, and often at 3 a.m. He would call me at 3 a.m, and I would say, Brian, it's 3 a.m. Why can't you call me at 8 a.m.? And he goes, well, I'll be asleep then. I think of Brian.
He called me too.
Yeah, he was just
walk, Nate, walk. Take the belt, walk. Not quite that simple.
What might have been for Brian had it not been for the Humvee accident, which really cut him off at the knees in terms of working ability? I mean, he was still very good, but the problem with that was he didn't like just being very good, and I thought that really
nobody does.
Did a lot of damage to him psychologically, and he was never the same after that. And I hate to say that might have started him down the path that eventually he came to an end with, but it was very sad.
Yeah, it was. I think anytime somebody's been at such an elite level, I mean, I go back to the Griffin kid. Is it Robert Griffin III?
Yeah, RG3, correct.
RG3 that suffered that injury, and when there was I think it was an argument as to whether he should have been put back in the game or not. I think Shanahan was the coach. And he got hurt worse, and he just never came back from it. And
once a guy like him loses his mobility,
yes,
you know what I mean. All his other skills paled by comparison.
Exactly.
And I think there was an element of that to Brian too, because the way he moved like a Division I All-American. He just had that
like a cat.
Right. He had anticipation that went way beyond wrestling.
Yes.
So I thought once he had to have, I think his ankle was fused.
Yeah.
That took away a great part of his repertoire. Although I would always tell him, your psychology, your persona is still head and shoulders above almost everybody else. But he wanted to be that big time worker in the ring. Yep. Here are two Brian stories. One you may not know, Nate, but one I know you remember. How about when he was doing the loose cannon and he grabbed Bobby Heenan on live TV and Bobby screamed out, "What the fuck are you doing?" on live TV, and then walked off. Total shoot, unbelievable.
Yeah. I don't remember that, but I'm sure it happened.
Oh yeah, it was on a Clash of the Champions. And Bobby legit had to be talked back on the air.
Yeah, I know. Well, Bobby had to be talking to manage me again a couple of times after a couple of nights on the road.
Well, that was a different kind of discussion. And another story, I've told this many times, but I'll keep it brief. I covered the Steelers and Cowboys Super Bowl in 1996, Super Bowl 30 for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
Yeah.
And that was when Brian was a free agent, was trying to generate all kinds of publicity and awareness to try to drive up his contract. And he called me up and goes, listen, I got an idea. You give me your press pass to the Super Bowl, and I run onto the field and chain myself to the goalpost.
Yeah.
It'll take them forever to get me out of there. It'll be all over the place. I'll get the biggest deal in wrestling history.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Brian, I think that's a great idea. I go, but then I couldn't cover the game.
Yeah.
I'd get fired from my job, and I would never work in journalism again. And there's like a 15-second pause, and Brian goes, listen, I can't be the only one making sacrifices.
Yeah. That was during a period of time when Brian was under medication for the pain in his ankle.
Well, I was just about under medication for something at that point too. And it's funny too, because I left the Post-Gazette less than a year later, and had I known that, I'd have given him the press pass. What about Brian Jr., who wrestles in AEW?
I finally got to meet him. Yeah, what a nice kid.
Yeah, I think he's a real talent, and we're going to talk about this in just a little bit, but I think that roster's so overcrowded that some guys who are great talents like him and his partner, Griff Garrison in the Varsity Blondes, they just don't get enough exposure, and it's not anybody's fault. That's just how many people they have, but I still feel for the kid because I think he can be a star.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, regardless of how it ended for Brian, I mean, the fact that people like you and I can reflect on all the good things he did, and that's one of the reasons that Brian's son will be able to, I think more people are going to remember Brian as being a great worker and a great talent rather than, the stuff that people would ever say negative about him. Which
I don't think anybody speaks negative of Brian now. I just
no, I meant how he passed away and all that.
Oh yeah, but the loose cannon stuff, like some of the stuff, the crazy stuff he did, like in ECW, that brief stopover. I mean, that's what I'm glad about YouTube, because Brian Pillman will live forever on YouTube. Some of the stuff he did to this day.
And that you just made a very valuable point, because I think someone a couple of weeks ago insinuated that I had to use them to get a rub. I won't bring up her name, but she better turn on YouTube or go into the library.
Oh, there's plenty of Ric Flair, that's for sure.
Yeah, no. There's more than plenty. I got 14 cameos on my phone to make today, and all they want to hear me say is limousine riding, jet flying, kiss, stealing, wheeling, dealing. They don't want to hear nothing else. So nothing I did after that will ever be forgotten. It'll never be replaced. So I don't need a rub from anybody, Miss whatever.
I'll tell you a story that gave me a rub that involves Brian before we move on. Brian was in the act with a WWE female personality, and he called me on the phone and did play-by-play. In the act, and I've said who it was before. I won't right now.
Don't do it now.
But I will. But I will say he even talked her into doing a little bit of color commentary at one point. So it was just delightful.
I'm not talking. I don't have comments on this part of the show.
Well, yeah, I'm going to take over. Hey, it's the Ric Flair podcast, but I'm going to take over every so often, please.
You have to. I'm not allowed to make comments and that kind of stuff.
Now, so Brian Pillman was our friend for the week.